For 8 years, my 35-year-old wife and I were wed. That was 5 years ago. She made the decision for us to be childless. Although I had always claimed that our marriage was happy, I can now see that it was beneficial to her. This is my tale. I've always been the clever, bookish kind that never seems to fit in. Because of the bequest from my grandparents and some wise investments made by my parents, I come from a very wealthy family. I could have lived a comfortable life without attending college or working, but I chose to do what I loved. In my first year of college, I met my wife who was seeking for a tutor and was in my class. She received a scholarship. We became closer every day, although we never did hang out on the weekends. She would still go out on the weekends even though I wasn't the gregarious sort. We eventually began dating, and we were married shortly after my graduation. In retrospect, it seems like she made decisions for us from the day we started dating. During the early half of our marriage, my wife worked, and she was laid off when her company underwent downsizing. She became a wife who stayed at home most of the time. She essentially spent my money on her affluent lifestyle, going on trips and hosting numerous lunches and dinners with her pals. Even though I recall our early love life being intense, it's only in my recollection. I was in an automobile accident when I was 29 years old. My car was totaled by an allegedly intoxicated driver, yet I still don't remember that day. My 2 weeks in a coma were spent. I had a lot to learn how to do again after I woke up. 4 months later, I returned to my job. My wife put me in the spare room when I got home. She claimed that because I was snoring, it had been that way for some time. I said nothing, but I was aware that this was unusual. I think the accident helped me become more clear-headed. Even though it was obvious that the marriage was over, I was still determined to try to keep it together. I tried everything, but nothing worked. For me, turning 30 was the clincher. She was out having a spa day with her pals when I got home. I watched a movie, placed a takeaway order, and made a choice. I desired to be free. I went to my lawyer the following morning to begin drafting divorce documents. I didn't talk to her anymore until it was absolutely required. I gradually began to sell everything that held sentimental worth for me. I gave her everything I had. I recently purchased a new vehicle, which I parked in a garage not far from our house. After a month, all I had left were my clothing, a few laptops, a portable screen, a projector, and anything else I needed to function while on the go. I made arrangements for my work to be entirely remote rather than quitting. I stayed while my wife was out having lunch with her girls 2 months after my birthday. I took the new car, loaded up with everything I needed, tucked a letter and the divorce papers under my bed in the spare room, and, wondering how long until she noticed, I shut the door to my house for the last time. My wife didn't want me to drive cross-country and visit all the places I had wanted to see but couldn't because of her. She had no legal right to inquire because we had a prenuptial agreement. I told her in the letter that I was going, that I would give up the house and the car, and that I would pay a certain amount each month for precisely a year. She was on her own after that. I was so foolish that I neglected to explain my departure. This would be advantageous to me. My wife texted me 10 days after I departed, inquiring as to where I was and whether this was a joke. I didn't answer her call since I never answer the phone when I'm driving. She texted me nonstop that evening, and I had an automatic message delivered that said, "I'm driving and will call back later." I decided to check the texts before I called her back when I stopped at a motel. She started by questioning if this was a joke, then she inquired about my return date and finally begged me to return, not understanding why I had left. She then made a statement. She apologized, said it meant nothing, and would now cut him off. I was unaware that she was having an affair. She was at her parents' when I contacted her on her mobile. This is a strategy one saw on TV. I hung up when she started ranting at me. After a minute, I called her back, and when she started ranting again, I hung up. After 2 minutes, I called her back, and this time, instead of getting yelled at, I started a conversation. I informed her that she would allow me to speak first and that she could ask questions once I had finished speaking. When I left, I told her why. Even though we were married, We didn't really live like roommates because they at least acknowledged one another. I don't recall our most recent chat or activity that we completed as a group. Although I can't recall when we last had sex, I know it was before the accident. Before I left, I informed her I stopped talking for a month and sold everything I owned in the house, and she didn't even notice. It was 10 days after my departure before she became aware of my absence. I would have turned around right away if she had called the day I left. She attempted to apologize, so I questioned why she requested me to return. I concluded by saying, "Thank you for admitting to the affair, I really didn't know about that." I would think about it if she could tell me why. For me, what was in it? What would be altered? I told her my lawyer knows how to get in touch with me and bid her farewell when she was unable to respond. I then blocked her. I bought a new phone the following day and gave the old one back to the motel. My attorney emailed me to let me know that the divorce papers had been signed 2 weeks later. I had no restrictions. I delivered on my promise. My attorney already had my signature on all the paperwork giving her ownership of the house and the automobiles. Her account receives a set amount automatically deposited by the bank. I've been working remotely while traveling the country for the past 5 years. I had a purpose at last to start using social media. I shared my whereabouts and plans on the internet. I spent a few weeks in one location before driving to the next. A year after I separated, my ex-wife began following me on Instagram, and I was curious enough to check out her public posts. I have no intention of following her again. Not long after I departed, she uploaded pictures with her lover. She did not disparage me, at least not on Instagram, to her credit. They broke up, reportedly, 2 months after I moved out. That was pretty much the last update I had about her. I now have a sexual life as well. It turns out that casual sex was simpler after I put myself out there. Not in a committed relationship at the moment. Years later, I'm returning to my hometown. I would like to go to a reunion. I may stay for 2 months, but after that I'm heading to Canada. I won't be aggressively avoiding my ex, but I also don't have any plans to look her up. I'll notice her if I see her. I do not if I do not. Why did you give her your house? Serious L. You've been a doormat your entire life, and you abandoned the house when you eventually developed a backbone. In a sense, you gave her a reward for lying. Don't be a doormat, to anyone who may be listening. Setting and maintaining boundaries is perfectly acceptable. If you don't, you'll wind up like Op shared an update saying, "I met my ex-wife," or, to put it another way, "we ran into each other." Actually, it was more like she ran into me. I had barely placed my lunch order at the cafe when a woman sat down at my table. I must have appeared perplexed as she gave me a disbelieving look and said, "It's really you. You don't recognize me, do you?" she asked, and I looked more closely and saw who she was. She has a distinct appearance. Her hair is colored and styled differently. She's back to wearing spectacles. She used to wear a ton of cosmetics, but the last I heard, she was a college student and wearing minimal makeup. It's true that she looked stunning. She desired to make up lost time. I invited her to join me for lunch, telling her that I would be friendly but that I had arrangements to attend to afterwards. I found out that the majority of her pals had broken up with her because she was unable to pay for their lavish excursions, meals, spa days, etc. She moved into an apartment after selling the house. She met the man she is currently seeing at her job, which she currently has. Her life now is good and ordinary, not ostentatious. I don't need Reddit's encouragement to despise her and take nuclear retaliation, even though I know they want it. It's not necessary for us to be enemies just because we won't be friends. Yes, I paid for the meal, and sure, I said goodbye to her with a hug. I did add her back on Instagram, but I'm not giving her my contact details. It seems sufficient to me. Additionally, a distant colleague who came across my Reddit article extended an invitation for me to visit a small South American nation. Seriously considering it. Driving through his country, that is, and the food he recommended. Since the country is not too large, it would only take a few weeks. I wouldn't know how to ride a bike, so I would just follow him and his girlfriend in my car. He rides a bike. Meeting your ex would have been a strange scenario. It's excellent that you moved on from her and aren't upset about it. Enjoy your journey to South America, please. This brings us to the following scenario: would I be the a-hole if I told my kids? In it, a recently departed female 44 cheated on her 16-year-old male 16-year-old daughter. Is 46 years old, and the wound is still quite raw. My 22-year wife passed her unexpectedly in a vehicle crash a month ago. Unfortunately, Cynthia's terrible habit of staring into her phone while driving finally caught up with her in the final week of January. When the police arrived at my door and told me she had a deadly accident, I was pretty heartbroken, and I wanted to do something in her honor. I was unaware of her affair at the time of the accident. Over the past 4 or 5 months, I have noticed that she is becoming less intimate with me, but I haven't given it much consideration because I assumed that this was a common occurrence for couples who had been together for 20 years. But Cynthia began to write, at least according to what she told me. She was typing away on her laptop non-stop, regardless of the time of day. She informed me that she was writing a fantasy book, which would ideally be the first in a series. In response to my further questions, she said that it was about a fantasy world in which a highly advanced human race appeared and interacted with elves, orcs, and magic using laser rifles and high-tech equipment. It seemed really cool, and Cynthia said she would let me read the first draft as soon as she had one that she was happy with. I made the decision to pay tribute to her by obtaining the manuscript of her book, employing a writer to polish it, and publishing it through a novelty press. I checked her laptop and there was no book or sign at all. I spotted several pinned tabs when I opened her Chrome, assuming she had written it in Google Drive. One had numerous communications she had sent to a man named John on Facebook Messenger. They discussed getting together, exchanging pictures, and other things, but I have no idea who JN is or how we ever met. 2 days prior to Cynthia's accident, John sent her a final message in which he declared his intention to embark on a business trip to Germany, and the two expressed their love for one another. I had previously changed the locks because Cynthia and John's texts indicated that they had met at the residence multiple times. I'm not sure if JN has returned, and to be honest, I don't really care. I was completely heartbroken. She did have a Google Drive tab, but the file she shared with John was not a book about elves against Vulcans. The document was a draft that she and John had written outlining how they would divorce me, turn the kids against me, and seize our house and all of our money. She mentioned that she had been removing a few $100s a month and depositing it into a different account. I was able to settle the bank issue and transfer the funds to the children's college account. In addition, I've been attending therapy twice a week. It is difficult to be angry with someone who has passed away, especially when everyone else in your life is celebrating their amazing mother and wife. I have spoken with my therapist regarding the appropriateness of informing my children about Cynthia's actions and her future plans. I was advised against this by my therapist. He claimed that telling them this would be demeaning to their mother, who passed away recently, would be unjust. Perhaps now is not the right moment, but I believe my kids will ultimately find out. If you still want to inform your kids, wait till they are adults. Otherwise, I wouldn't advise it. On your wife, rejoice because karma brought her to you. You will no longer be required to give up half of your assets, pay her alimony, and maintain custody of your children. The update date is now available. Since the last time, some things have occurred to address certain queries. I visited the bank, took over Cynthia's account, and moved the funds into the kids' savings account. My kids already had suspicions, too. My oldest child, Michelle, told me she and my son, Jason, had something to tell me on Tuesday night. I was seated in the living room when Michelle said, "We think Mom was cheating on you." They both admitted that they weren't positive, but they were so consumed by my great sadness over the past month that they felt it was only fair to share their suspicions with me. These are some of the seeds Cynthia indicated in her document that she wanted to sow in the kids. They brought up how Cynthia was never home and would make odd observations about me, like, "Isn't it weird your dad's working late this week?" Michelle claimed that the week prior to the accident, upon returning from school and noticing an unusual jacket hanging on the coat hook at the front door, her suspicions were aroused. She was skeptical because it wasn't the same jacket that either Jason or I owned. I assured my children that I had not told them, but when searching for the book their mother claimed to be writing, I came upon evidence on her computer. Though Jason stated he didn't want to think or talk about Mom for long, Michelle insisted on seeing the proof. Michelle insisted she already suspected her mom and was prepared, so I gave her the information. It is comforting to have someone close by who is able to discuss things with me. Outside of my therapy. I was alone at home yesterday afternoon when I heard someone twiddling the knob on the rear door. When I got to the door, I observed a man I had never seen before attempting to unlock the lock with a key. When I told him to move away from the door, he nearly gave a start. I asked him what he was doing in my backyard and who he was when I cracked open the door. John, Cynthia's lover, was there. He informed me that he was my wife's employee and that, while returning from a holiday, he had discovered Cynthia's passing on social media when he and Cynthia were launching a business. He was asking whether I could assist him in getting the business cash transferred over from their personal bank account to a company bank account where they kept his investment money. I was at the bank, and Cynthia didn't have an extra business account, I responded, staring him square in the eye and utterly clueless about what he was talking about. John added that he wished to search my wife's belongings for any confidential business records. I told him that, since he attempted to enter my house without permission, he was a stranger and wasn't welcome. Though he appeared dejected, John did offer to speak with a lawyer regarding his private company records and money. I'm delighted your wife is no longer with you, not to come across as a jerk. One evildoer removed from the planet. Which psychopath would try to indoctrinate their children to hate the other parent? In the end, she wanted to ruin you entirely. She received some sort of cosmic justice from her karma. You are now free, live your best life, find someone better, and spend time with your children. And don't be afraid to use your Second Amendment rights if that guy, John, sets foot in your home. And lastly, I am helpless after reading the final story. Am I wrong for feeling bad for my friend's children? In the second year of their marriage, my friend's wife had an extramarital affair. Finally, a year and a half later, my friend learned about it. Furthermore, he tested his children's DNA and discovered that neither of them, a girl, age 6, and a boy, age 7, is truly his. In addition to telling her that he would leave the kids, he filed for divorce. He won't see them or give them any thought again, but he will pay what he has to if he has to. He informed me that he is under no obligation to care for them since they are not his. He ignored my insistence that they are innocent. He basically told everyone what had transpired when he called the families of both of them. I found the entire event to be horrifying. I was there mostly as a witness, but at one point his wife broke down in tears and pleaded with him to consider the kids. I had to remove him from her before he could do something aggressive after spitting in her face. How could she have dared to beg? He was screaming at me. Anyway, everything leading up to the divorce was turmoil enough, but then the divorce actually happened. He moved to a new place, obtained a new career, and stopped communicating with his ex-wife and kids once the divorce was finalized. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's clear that he suffers from PTSD. In addition, he informed me that he would never be married again and that he would consider surrogacy if he ever wanted a child. In essence, their kids lost both a father and grandparents. When they grow up, kids will most likely despise their mother. Her mother is the only person who is somewhat on her side. Her own father no longer wants to see her. When I see the kids occasionally, they always want to know if I speak to their father and when he will return, which makes me sad and cry. They did nothing wrong, but they bear the consequences of their mother's actions, which is why my heart aches so much for them. For me, the whole thing was too much. I even spent some time in therapy. I've actually seen a family disintegrate. I can't do much to aid those kids, but I think about them a lot. It's devastating. I'm not passing judgment on him. All I wanted to do was show my concern for the kids. It's understandable that you would feel sorry for the kids, but your friend's wife is the one who started this whole situation. The father of the children is, in fact, their real father. The genuine father should be located for their mother. To be honest, I'm more sorry about your friend. He lost his entire family, but the kids lost their dad. All he believed was false. The poor guy's still in mourning. I hold him completely innocent. It's all for today, then.